Hello and welcome. What you just heard was a part of my live set that I played a few days ago. The music was improvised and I prepared some pads and atmospheric sounds, and all the sequences were coming from a modular system. I figured out that I never talked about my modular system on my channel, so today I'm here to explain how my rack is built and how the setup works, and also how I control and sequence my modular system using the Oxi One mk2 sequencer. I must say that I'm more of a synthesizer guy and that my music is usually not so heavily based or built around my Eurorack system. There are still a few things that I absolutely love about Eurorack and modular system. The first thing is that when I use modulations, it's always super precise and fast. Technically, I can also modulate parameters on a per step basis with MIDI, with any of my synthesizers, but sometimes it depends on the timing and the sequencer that you use, and also how fast the synthesizers can process the incoming MIDI data. If I use the modular system and use CV signals to control different parameters, it's always very precise and fast, and it feels like more immediate to work with modulations and the Eurorack system. I will show you exactly how I do that and show you some examples of how it sounds. I also like about the modular system that you always see what you get. Whenever I work with a synthesizer with presets like, let's say, the Prophet, it's nice to save everything, but once you start changing the patches, of course, all the knobs don't reflect the actual settings of your synthesizers. Especially when you have a synthesizer without a display or some other means of telling you what the settings are, you're kind of lost. And this is something that I really like with the modular system, especially when I improvise. The live set that I played a few days ago and that you saw at the beginning of the video was one of those sets where I just prepared a few sounds and then I built everything through the next hour. And whenever I have a spontaneous idea for a sequence or a sound, I can quite well set it up on the modular system and see what's going on and play with it. This is something that I can, of course, also do with other synthesizers, but I always feel that when I'm trying to improvise and be spontaneous, it's very nice to work with the modular system. On the other hand, the modular system is probably the most complicated and most expensive way of achieving sounds that you can also easily make with other synthesizers. I don't use the modular system for super special, fancy, granular, whatever stuff. It's basically 2 or 3 synthesizer voices. So I'm not probably using the full extent of what modular and Eurorack could do, but it's still a lot of fun. And so let's dive in and see how the stuff works here in my setup. Those were the two sequences I used in the ambient night improvisation. And as you can see, I have the system in a tip-top audio case, and the Oxi sequencer is here on my desk. And this is Neptune, and Neptune really likes the Oxi, probably because of the blinking lights. The Oxi One has a lot of CV and gate outputs, but I'm using this little HDMI pipe cable, which is connected to a breakout module here in the middle. If you cannot see what I'm doing here, I'm uploading my modular system to Modular Grid, and there's a link in the description. So the Oxi sends 8 CV and 8 gate signals to my modular rack. I patched my system in a way that I can have 3 individual synthesizer voices, and they are all ending up in this output module here on the lower right. And so I have like audio 1, 2, and 3. And also I can use the panorama buttons to have them on individual outputs. So when I'm using Bitwig or Ableton and I want to have them on separate channels, I can use this panorama function. Let's build something from scratch to understand how this is all going on. First, I need to tell the Oxi One mk2 sequencer which of the CV and gate outputs should be assigned to the channels, because we have 8 different sequence channels here, and so we need to tell this sequencer which of the CV and gate outputs it should use. I do this by hitting Shift and CV gate, and let's say I want to have gate output 1 on channel 1, then I can just press gate 1. I could also assign gate 2, 3, and whatever, but in this case I only want gate number 1 assigned to channel 1. Of course, we also want to send CV data, so I'm also pressing this button because those 8 over here are the 8 CV signals. Also, what I want to do is I want to have 2 modulation channels to change any of the parameters that I want to patch. And so I'm also assigning CV2 and 3 to the same channel 1. In order to actually use the modulation channels, I need to press and hold this button. And then here it says type, and usually it's set to pitch, but then I have to use this encoder to switch it to mod 1. I do the same with this one, but I set it to mod 2. So what's happening now is that the first channel is the pitch, the second one modulation 1, and the third one modulation 2. After I assign the outputs, I want to record a new sequence. There are many ways to do that, and I like to input the notes with an external keyboard. I connected this keyboard with a MIDI cable to the input, so now after I select track 1, I can play the notes on my keyboard. The first channel is the Make Noise 0 coast. I really love the sound of the synthesizer, and you probably heard that sound in a lot of my tracks. It has a very unique sound that I absolutely love. I use the step input mode for the first track, and to do this I hit record and hold it and then press play, and then this thing moves into something called step recording. Now I can play and enter notes individually one by one by just pressing them on the keyboard, and I can also use rest and tie. So let's record a few notes with the sequencer. Let's go back to exit this mode and hit play. We now have 16th notes because this is the default setting. To change this, I hit Shift and 1, and then I go to track, and then I can set the division to anything I want, in this case 16th note. Of course, this thing also reacts to incoming sync signals, so I could also hit play on my sequencer, which is in this case Bitwig version 6, and then it would also start and stop the sequencer, and I find this thing to work very accurately with incoming sync signals, so hooking this thing up to a DAW works really well. Let's make this a bit more interesting by introducing the modulation lanes. The modulation lanes can be accessed by hitting the mod button, and now you have 4 modulation lanes on the upper row, and if you double tap this, you get to the lower row. Because I assigned the CV output 2 and 3 to mod lanes 1 and 2, I can now change any parameter that I connected to the outputs of CV 2 and 3 here on this output pipe module with those knobs. That sounds complicated, but just let me demonstrate what I mean. This output here is connected to a parameter called multiply, which changes the overtone spectrum. So when I play this sequence and I move this knob here on the modular system, it changes the timbre. And now I can do the same thing by using this knob. I just did this to demonstrate how now the Oxi mk2 can change this parameter. When I'm in this mod channel 1, what I do is I change the length of the sequence to something that is different than the actual sequence. So the whole sequence has 16 steps, but my first mod lane will now have 3 because I'm hitting and press 3. So when I press play, you see how this resets after 3 steps. With this function, I can create polyrhythmical permutations that create an interesting modulation of the sequence. What I'm doing now is entering a very simple pattern with just 3 CV settings. By default, the Oxi One sequencer creates a smooth fade between those parameters. In order to get rid of this and have a precise and fast modulation, you need to select the mod lane and then hit the track button. And actually, you don't. You hit the page button. And then there's a parameter called smooth. By default, it's set to 15, but I always put it to 0 to have a fast and not interpolated parameter change on the CV output. On the second modulation output, I connected the decay of the amp envelope. I first show you how this sounds by tweaking the parameter on the module. This is very short, and this is very long. So first I go to page and select smooth and put it to 0. And after that, I am creating a pattern with, let's say, 7 notes. And I enter some low values and 1 high value. Let's see how that sounds. Yeah, I think this is very nice. What I like about the modular system is that those incoming signals are always offsets. So Other than with MIDI data, which would send an absolute value to the synthesizer parameter, I can still change the parameters that are automated. So I can still make the decay shorter, and I can also change the overtone setting. And it all sounds very interesting and always changes because those sequences are always on different steps. This is like the 7-note modulation, this is the 3-note modulation, and the whole sequence is a 16-note sequence. My second synthesizer voice is based on Mutable Instruments plates, which goes into blades, and both are modulated by maths and going into a VCA. First, I go to my CV gate menu again and assign the second gate output to channel 2, and then the CV outputs 4, 5, and 6 also to channel 2. And again, I'm holding the second channel to set it to mod 1 and the next one to mod 2, which gives me one CV output for the actual note signal and 2 additional outputs for modulation stuff. Plates is in the most basic mode that you can possibly use here. It just sends out a sawtooth and a square wave, and the output goes to the input of this dual filter mode. For the start, I only play on filter 1. So this is my low pass filter. Math is receiving the gate input through the multiple module, and the first envelope is affecting the volume of the patch. And I really like how snappy and short the envelopes can be here on maths. The second envelope is connected to the frequency of the filter. And then with the routing knob here in the middle, I can also blend in the second filter, which is set to bandpass mode. I can here add another interesting flavor to this whole patch. Here on channel 2, I can now enter my next sequence, and this time I want to use the real-time recording function. By hitting Shift and Record, I can first check some settings. I want it to be quantized, and also I want to make sure that this sequence is also running in 8th notes and not 16th notes. Now when I hit play, I still hear my first sequence. And after improvising, when I know what I want to play, I can hit record and play, and then I can just in real time enter the sequence. Unfortunately, there's no metronome built into this thing. I really like about the Arturia KeyStep Pro that it has a built-in metronome with the actual speaker in the sequencer. I could patch some stuff to one of the outputs for a metronome, or I could also use the metronome of my DAW, but since I already recorded one track, I feel safe to play on top of that one. So that would be the count in, then I wait after 1 bar is done and start recording. like this. I hit record again to exit this recording mode, and now I have my second sequence recorded here on channel 2. This is quite boring after a while, so again I'm going into my modulation channels. Make sure that they are not doing any smoothing stuff, so this should be set to 0 as well. The first output of the modulation lanes is connected to my bandpass filter. I want to do a pattern with, let's say, 5 notes here, and first I want to check if the connection is correct. So I'm playing this, and yeah, it works. Now with this knob I can control the second filter. And so I just enter a ridiculous sequence, which makes no sense at all, but probably sounds nice. Maybe I make this sequence a bit longer. This. Yeah, this is nice. And since this modulation sequence is having a different length than the actual notes, it always shifts in an interesting way. Modulation channel 2 is connected to the decay time. With this channel here, I can this is interesting. It never really triggers because my main sequence has some rests in it. So I should probably change this modulation to quarter notes. So now we should have better luck with the sequence. Yeah, that's nice. And of course I can always affect the depth of the modulation because this is running through a VCA module, so now I don't have any modulation of the decay time, and now the modulation is a bit bigger. Neptune obviously likes longer decay times. Hello Neptune. Neptune, careful. Yeah. Neptune, careful with the keys. We are not in F. What did I tell you about scales, Neptune? Of course, the Oxi can store a lot of sequences at the same time, so this is like the stuff I just recorded, but I could also go back to what I had here on my other project yesterday. And I can also transpose everything on the performance page. Let's have to wrap this up a quick look at the third channel. First, I need to assign this to gate output 3, and then we have only one pitch and one mod output left because we have only 8 CV outputs. And here on channel 3, I am creating a completely analog voice. There is the Dixie on the top left, which has multiple outputs, and those outputs run into warps. The easiest way of working with this is to have the sawtooth in channel 1, and then I can blend to the sub oscillator, but I could also patch like another output so that I could blend in between the sawtooth and the square. That would also be possible. Please don't ask me where these crackling sounds are coming from. That's a bit annoying. But most of the time I'm using sawtooth and the sub oscillator. Of course, warps has a lot of interesting other modes to blend those in between. There are wave shapers, ring modulators, and whatsoever. The output goes into ripples, which is an analog filter. I really like that one. Quite a nice filter, I would say. For this voice, I also need 2 envelopes, and for this I'm using this cheap knockoff, the Roland System 100. It has 2 envelopes and an LFO, which is very useful for a small system like this. And here again, the first envelope controls the volume. And the second one is connected to the filter. And then there is also another LFO, which I can send to the filter with this VCA knob over here. And this also goes from very slow to very fast, and also I think audio rate. Modulation. So most of the time I'm just using a very slow modulation of the filter. So this is what I'm doing with this case right now. It's basically 3 synthesizers in a small form factor right on my desk, right in front of me. I can always see what's going on. I have some extra modules which I didn't use, which is the peaks, which gives me another set of LFOs that I can use to change different parameters here on the system. And like I said, I really like how I can use different modulation channels to control parameters here. Right now, it's patched in a way that I have like 1 pitch and 2 modulation outputs here, but of course, any other combination is also possible. I try not to change this too much because I think the longer I work with this configuration, the faster I get in changing sounds and being spontaneous. And like I said, the idea of this system is to have something for my improvisational live sets where I don't know what I will end up doing. So I can just go and create an empty pattern here on the Oxi. And then while everything else is running, I can play, record, and change my sequences on this little device which sits here in front of me. I think that this is a very intuitive and fun way of creating sequences sounds with a modular system. So this is it for today. Thanks a lot for watching and see you next time.